Hey kids, this is Chef Jack with another edition of Marvel vs. DC. You all know the rules by now. Englentine and I have divided up every single comic book released by both DC and Marvel, and each week we review those new releases. We give each book a score of 1 to 5 stars, and at the end we average out the points, and the publisher with the best average score is the winner for that week. With all that said, let's get this party started. The 1-star books. These are the worst. Not merely bad, but awful and horrendous. Avoid them at all costs. Avengers number 11. Yay! An entire issue filled with the various Avengers trying to pick up the pieces after the events of the Secret Empire. Thor and the Falcon discuss leadership. Hercules and Vision discuss immortality. Spider-Man tries to figure out why the Wasp hates him. This book is slow, folks. There's literally nothing going on here at all. There's not even any jokes. There's no humor. And on top of it all, the art is absolutely horrible and the color choices are the worst. I mean, seriously, it is time for colorist Marco Delfonso to give it up and go to plumbing school or something, because he's an untalented hack who should not be allowed near a comic book anymore. Some of his color choices are just blinding. And yes, it distracts from an already horrible story. Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye number 12. I'm going to be honest here, this series has been damn confusing from start to finish, and I'm one of the few comic fans who even remember who Cave Carson was. This issue, which is supposed to be the last in the series, despite the fact that the final page says, next issue, Milk Wars, it doesn't change any of that. It's still confusing. The art is still horrible. The story is still, you can't grasp it. The entire thing's just a mess. It was just bizarre, the entire issue, just like the rest of the series. Maybe if I were to read the entire thing, collected it in single trade paperback instead of one issue at a time, the story would have made sense. But, I don't know if I can generate enough interest to actually do that. Venomverse War Stories number 1. Not content with using Edge of the Venomverse to lead into the main Venomverse series, Marvel's decided what they always decide. Let's have a crossover. The problem with this issue is, my God, there's just tons of them. At the end of the day, this is just one more example of Marvel's heroes being merged with the Venom symbiote and engaging in gratuitous violence. Anybody else bored yet? These stories are formulaic. Marvel's insistence that each of these series, each of them lead directly into the main event probably doesn't help. Unless you're one of those insane people who just has to have every single appearance of Venom, give this one a pass. Don't even bother. Do not give Marvel your money for this kind of trash. The 2-star books. These comics might be bad, but there's usually one or two things that save them from being truly horrible. Astonishing X-Men number 3. While this issue was a little bit better than the previous 2 issues in this series, and yeah, the story is beginning to get a little interesting, I think, I can't help but feel that there's still something missing, and whatever it is that's missing, it's huge. It's something big that's important to the plot, and I've got no idea what it is, but it needs to be there, and it's not there. For all I know, it's just that I'm still unsure about the characters that were chosen to make up this team, because those choices were a little odd to me. And that thing with Mystique impersonating the Beast out of nowhere, yeah, that came out of left field and it was confusing as hell, and I think it was unnecessary. And lastly, where is this story going? We're 3 issues in. Shouldn't this story have progressed further than it has been? I mean, where is it going? Cyborg number 16. As this series has progressed, the stories become harder and harder to follow. Answers to plot questions have been left unanswered or are slow in coming. And sometimes various pieces of the narrative are so bug-nuts random that they make no damn sense whatsoever. That said, this issue actually does deliver a bunch of answers. But they're answers that we've been waiting for since, I don't know, Cyborg number 8 at least. I think 8 issues is far too long to, create a mystery with no payoff. The artwork in this issue is okay, but given that my expectations were low about the story, maybe that's faint praise, I don't know. I just expected more, and I haven't been getting it from this series, and that's disappointing because I am a huge fan of the character. Titans number 15. Okay, usually I try my best to avoid spoilers in my reviews, but there is absolutely no way I can talk about this book without talking about the ending and giving it completely away. So consider yourself warned. There are spoilers in this review. If you don't want that, skip ahead to the next one, okay? You ready? All right? Okay, spoilers from here on out. You have been warned. The fact that the writers killed off Wally West came right out of nowhere, and it hit me right between the eyes, and it ruined what was otherwise a really great plot, because it was like, oh, and by the way, boom, here, let's kill off a character. I have a problem with this. Either they're going to resurrect him quickly, or they're not going to resurrect him quickly. The thing is, Wally was just brought back from non-existence when the rebirth happened. So to kill him off now makes his entire return a waste of a story, and it makes it a waste of a death. Either way, this development does not sit well with me. If Dan Abnett has some clever way out of this, I'll be the first to applaud him. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see how he cleverly escapes this trap that he's put himself in. I just don't think he has any clever way out of it. I think it's going to be trite and cliched, and I think I'm going to hate it. Venomverse number 1. Anybody else notice that it seems to be the basic editorial policy at Marvel to say, hey, you know, this thing over here worked really well, so let's do it again, and 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 again. All to, you know, cash in. That's basically just what, you know, this is. It's the Spider-Verse story, but with Venom instead of Spider-Man. That's all it is. Except, you know, it's not written as well. And given that the Spider-Verse crossover was written like shit, that gives you the level of writing in this particular series. This book did have some strong artwork, however, and that is the only thing that keeps this from being a 1-star book. The 3-star books. These comics are just average. They fall neither on the good end of the spectrum nor the bad. Darth Vader number 5. The last issue in the current story arc sees Vader being sent to Mustafar by the Emperor in order to bend the Kyber crystal to his will and create his trademark red lightsaber. As a story point, having the crystal bleed, quote-unquote, is awkward at best. That said, I'm glad this story arc is over. It's got an interesting look into the internal conflict within Anakin Skywalker, and we get to see what would have happened had he turned against the Emperor and once again taken up his role as a Jedi. But unfortunately, we know that that's not gonna happen. So there's no surprises and no suspense and no build-up, and, you know, okay, so why did we just waste our time reading this issue? It's not a bad issue, though. It's not, you know, it's actually got some good spots. It's just, in the end, we already know how it's going to end. And the last page is just unnecessary fan service. Doctor Strange number 25. Now that the Secret Empire is over, there's no need to tie into it, and, you know, Doctor Strange and, you know, all the other Marvel titles can go back to the status quo. And that is unfortunate, because the status quo with Doctor Strange before Secret Empire was boring. Now, this is John Barber's first issue as a new writer, and he does interweave 2 stories. One is in the present, another is about, 15, 20 years ago. The 2 stories have different artists, and that's about the height of the fun there. The fact that, you know, the flashbacks are all the classic Doctor Strange art. This entire issue is filler. And it's not the good kind of filler either. It's the boring kind of filler. Luckily, there's just enough non-boring in this issue to keep it from sinking further in the ratings. But it's, you know, yeah, okay, if you want to read a Doctor Strange book, here you go. But if you're really looking for a fantastic Doctor Strange story, this one's not for you. Doom Patrol number 8. This issue picks up from the storylines left hanging in issue 6 back in May. And as a result, there's a lot of exposition to remind the readers of everything that went on back then. You know, and then there's, you know, some implied interspecies sex, and there's a new status for the negative entity, and the entire thing seemed to be like it was a primer to help people understand what the next issues were doing, rather than a proper issue on its own. There was no there when it came to this series. It was, you know, I'm not saying it was necessarily badly written. It was just, you know, it was fluff. It was a whole lot of fluff, and entirely skippable fluff at that. Hawkeye number 10. I really wish I could give this issue a higher rating because as far as the actual story was concerned, I enjoyed the hell out of it. The story was fun and it was foreboding, and Madame Mask causes a huge mess in Kate Bishop's life, and it was fun to read. The action in the nightclub was fast-paced, and it was just great. The banter between Oddball and Mask as Bishop was just groovy. And I don't think Oddball has ever been used this well in, ever. What kills the issue is the art, though. The art is, it's suckage on high level. It sucks like an Electrolux. And this issue, it honestly looks like colorist Jody Belair just vomited onto the page rather than putting any effort into it. So yeah, there's good parts here and there's bad parts. You may want to read it, but I wouldn't go out of my way for it. Justice League of America number 14. This is like the third part in the League's journey into the microverse in search of Ray Palmer. And while it does show some promise at the end of the day, it still feels like it hasn't taken us anywhere. I mean, sure, the story has a lot of action, and yeah, the plot actually does manage to develop, but something is holding it back. I don't know, maybe it's Batman. Steve Orlando's writing is so okay it's average in this book, if you know what I mean. The story is just your standard superhero battle. It's the kind that were this the Justice League of the late 70s, it would be cosmic and huge and cool and awesome and just great. And here it's just not. It's like Orlando hasn't found his groove or something, which is surprising given the fact that he's been writing forever. Trinity number 13. Okay, so the fight with the possessed Red Hood and the possessed outlaws continues, and there's not a lot new I can say about this issue because everything I said about the last issue still applies to this one. I'm not really into the entire blood prophecy blah 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 that drives this story, and I'm pretty much only enjoying the dialogue when it's coming out of John Constantine's mouth. The entire thing is hard to enjoy because all of those little individual components, they are much more enjoyable than the whole, and that's never a good sign for a story. I will say that the art is growing on me. So, here's my final verdict. If you enjoyed this story so far, yeah, go ahead and pick up the issue. If you like John Constantine, go for it. Otherwise, take it or leave it. X-Men Gold number 11. Okay, here's the disappointment. After building up Omega Red as this huge threat, this story just sort of runs out of steam before it gets to the finish line. And it's only a 2-issue story. How does that happen? Someone please explain how a story just kind of peters out after only 2 stories. Alright, there were some good things. The character interaction was the best part of this particular issue, but like I said, the story was disappointing. There were some absolutely great moments. I've always been a fan of the Kitty Peter romance, and yay, go them, the fact that that's rebuilding, that's a good thing. But the plot line, the actual story here, boring. The fights were boring. The confrontations was boring. And why the hell was magic even in this story? I mean, Jesus. And I'm just getting tired of Old Man Logan. I'm tired of him. I'm tired of him. Do we have to see him in everything? He's almost as bad as Deadpool and Venom. The 4-star books. Now we're getting to the good stuff. These are the comics we can actually recommend. Batwoman number 7. This issue delves into Kathy Kane's mindset as she makes a really dangerous trek across the desert after a crash strands her in the middle of nowhere. The real highlight of this particular issue is the flashbacks. This is Marguerite Bennett's first issue writing solo, and she does a bang-up job. I mean, sure, this issue's filler, but it's the really great kind of filler, the kind that moves things along just enough to get you to the next story. I love how she keeps the dialogue and the thought balloons to a minimum so that the barren landscape of the art wasn't too cluttered, because the isolation of the character is what's important here. It's a great standalone issue, and I can't recommend it highly enough. There were some minor problems, The revelation at the end, for example, came out of nowhere, but they're not enough to sink the book. Daredevil number 26. Now that the Supreme story arc is out of the way, it's time to get back to good old-fashioned ass-kicking Daredevil. Don't get me wrong, I love the legal dramas, and I love the fact that they actually put a Law and Order style legal drama into Daredevil. That was fantastic. But at its core, Daredevil is a book about action, and I love the action. This issue is a great start to a new story arc. We get Daredevil dancing across the rooftops of Manhattan. We got street-level crime fighting. We got the return of the Hand. The art is just amazing. The color gives us just the right amount of moodiness. There were some minor complaints, sure. A couple of times the story moved from one scene to the next, and I felt like there was a missing scene there in between. But, again, minor things. It was an enjoyable story, and that's always a good thing. Deadpool number 36. You know how long it's been since I've actually enjoyed any comic that had Deadpool in it that didn't also have the Punisher in it? It's been a long while, guys, but I really grooved on this one, and it surprised the hell out of me. For the first time in his life, the glib, casual violence he surrounds himself comes back to bite Wade Wilson in the ass. This issue might have been titled Deadpool Learns That Karma is a Bitch and He Learns It the Hard Way. I gotta tell you, Dugan does a great job of keeping Deadpool solid and confident externally in this issue, while internally he is right on the edge of cracking like a damn egg. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the dialogue and the internal monologue, and the art was fantastic and the story was believable. This was a good issue, and it came out of nowhere and surprised me. Deadpool was good again. Deathstroke number 23. Even though this issue is absolutely jam-packed with story, it took me reading it 4 separate times before I realized just how little actually happens. The fact that there are, at last count, I think there were 8 or maybe 9 different storylines going on all at one time is quite the juggling act, and I hope that Christopher Priest is up to it. So far, he seems to be keeping that many balls in the air, but, seems is the operative word. At least the differing storylines are easy to keep track of. But, something has got to be resolved soon. They can't keep all this in the air all the time. And I know I'm extending that juggling metaphor way past its prime. One last thing. Christopher Priest has figured out how to write Tanya Spears, the new Power Girl, without turning her into a low-rent version of Riri Williams. And that's just good for everybody. Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme number 12. This is the very last issue of this title, and damned if it didn't end on a high note. Most of the rest of the series has been, well, to be blunt, trash. I'm serious. I think the highest rating I've given any previous issue was 3 stars. Mostly it's been hovering around 1 or 2. This issue, on the other hand, brings everything together. If I had seen this coming, if I had seen this ending coming, I might have given the previous issues higher marks. It was unexpectedly touching, and it was emotionally satisfying. The entire book made up of two-page spreads. It gives each page an epic grandeur. If only they were this good from the beginning, because this is just fantastic. Green Lanterns number 30. This issue is basically one long fight scene in which the first 7 Green Lanterns ever get their noob asses kicked by the bad guy. Carlo Barbera's pencils do a fantastic job of conveying all this constant motion and the constant action, and there's a great use of double-page spreads just when they're needed. It's really fun. The entire issue is fun, and it sets up the next issue effortlessly. That should have been effortlessly. That said, the action of the book does follow an idiot plot, as in, these guys have to be idiots to follow this plot. The heroes, for example, they've got the most powerful ranged weapon in the universe supposedly on their hands, and they run in and start punching with absolutely no plan at all. And given all the prep time leading up to this, you'd think that Simon and Jessica would have come up with something better than, get him! After you see the third guy rush in punching and pay for it, you kind of think, well, they deserved that. They're morons. And that's why this book is not a 5-star book. The 5-star books. These books are the best of the best, at least for this week. These are the ones that we recommend the most. All New Guardians of the Galaxy number 9. For a while now, All New Guardians has been one of those few Marvel titles that I can tolerate on a regular basis, and this latest issue just proves that I'm right about it. This has become the perfect mix of the comic version of the Guardians and the MCU version. The story that's been cooking in the background is finally being brought up to the front, and I just want to say I totally called the villain 4 issues ago. I totally called him. The art here is perfect. It gives every character an expressiveness that is somehow missing sometimes in even the best of comics. It's an impressive issue. The story is, it grabs you and it carries you. And I can't recommend it enough. Astro City number 47. This story just made me smile throughout the entire issue. I mean, seriously, from start to finish, first page to last. I had fun with this issue. It was fun. This is the origin story of G-Dog, the most adorable superhero in Astro City. It is also a redemption story about a man who turns his life around through the love of a pet. I mean, sure, it's corny. It's as corny as a goddamn Iowa farm field. But the quality of the writing and the art just makes you forget about the cornball nature of this story because it's just sweet and it's enjoyable. And the cliffhanger does suggest that the next issue is going to take a darker turn. But this particular issue is just pure magic. And of the 24 comics I'm reviewing in this video, this is the one that I'm saying is the best of the bunch. Even above the other 5-star books, this is the best one I'm reviewing right now. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 28. This is the type of comic I'd love to see more of. This is the kind that entertains through simple storytelling. No events, no flashy bullshit, just great writing and great characterization. And you know, the execution of this was absolutely amazing. The art was fantastic. The inking was great. The colors are perfect. Hell, even the lettering fits perfectly. This story takes a deep look into the character of Hal Jordan. And yeah, we've done this before in the past, but not in this way. We have never seen it this way before. And that's amazing given how long Hal Jordan's been around. This could have been a tried, trite, cliched story, but amazingly, Robert Venditti avoids this trap entirely. Get this issue, folks. If you're a Green Lantern fan at all, get this issue. You'll thank me. Justice League 28. This issue is a huge improvement over the last one, which basically just sat there and did nothing. And yeah, this is not the fastest issue. It's a very low-key chapter in the story, but it doesn't just sit there doing nothing. This issue packs up the overall story on its shoulders and carries it on down the road. It's all emotion, and it's all character building, and it's all heavy drama, and it may well be one of the best of this entire title's 28 issues so far. It is clear that the writers put a lot of effort into creating this particular story, especially in the characters of the young heroes, and the payoff is coming, and it's going to be a good one. This is a great setup for the next issue, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. And now for the roundup and the scoring. DC Comics had 1 1-star book, 1 2-star book, 3 3-star books, 3 4-star books, and 3 5-star books. That's a grand total of 39 points. I reviewed 12 titles from DC this video for an average score of 3.25. Marvel, on the other hand, had 2 1-star books, 2 2-star books, 4 3-star books, 3 4-star books, and 1 5-star book, for a grand total of 35 points. I reviewed 12 titles from Marvel in this video for an average score of 2.92. So congratulations to DC Comics for its completely unexpected and surprising come-from-behind victory. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic. Come on, we all knew what was going to happen. But folks, what did you think about these comics? Was I right? Was I wrong? Was I, just completely full of it? Tell me why you think so in the comments below. If you like this video and you want to see more of them, click like and subscribe and the little notification bell in the corner so you don't miss any of our future videos. And if you feel like helping out, we've got a Patreon page and a VidMe page set up, and there are links below. Feel free to wander over and drop $1 in the till. But even if you don't do that, thanks for taking the time out to watch. We do appreciate it, and we hope to catch you next time. Thank you very, very much for watching.